Religion has profoundly influenced the sweeping American narrative, perhaps more than any other force in our history, from the time of the indigenous peoples to the present day. The National Museum of American Religion tells the surprising and compelling story of what religion has done to America and what America has done to religion, including the establishment of the revolutionary and indispensable idea of religious freedom as a governing principle in the U.S., inviting all to explore the role of religion in shaping the social, political, economic, and cultural lives of Americans, and thus America itself. Join us for Season 3 of our podcast series, Religion in the American Experience, as we follow scholars and others deep into America's religious history and learn how it can inform and animate us as citizens grappling with complex questions of governance and American purpose in the 21st century. Episodes will be released monthly on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to another episode of The Making of Us, Lived Religion in America, a subseries of the podcast Religion in the American Experience. In this subseries, we explore the role religion has played in the lives of everyday Americans, reminding us that while religion exerts a significant influence on the events and movements of the American narrative, religion's primary work, and where it has the most influence, is in the everyday lives of believers. Today, Kathleen Wall of Jemez, Pueblo, New Mexico, joins us to tell her own religious history. Kathleen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So, Kathleen, first, please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, and you can leave out anything religious as we will get to that in depth later. Help our listeners get to know who you are.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kathleen Wall. I reside on the Jemez Pueblo Reservation. I was brought up kind of around New Mexico, a little bit in southern Colorado, and also Tucson, Arizona. And I grew up to be an artist. So I was taught how to make Pueblo pottery, which is very tribal type of pots and effigy motif type stuff from 6 of my aunties, 5 of my aunties and my mother. And so I was raised to make cultural arts, basically. And then over time, college, of course, is an influence. My work grew into sculptural forms, and now I paint and sculpt, and I am also an installational artist. I'm a mother of 3 and a wife of 21 years. So these are all aspects that influence my daily life.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you describe for us who your parents were religiously? What are their religious histories?
Well, they have very different backgrounds. My mother was raised on the Pueblo with an avid dual cultural and Catholic person. Her mother and father both were Catholic, so they were baptized, they were married, they went to school, Catholic school here at the mission. And over time, they raised all their children very Catholic. So my mother has these really great stories of, well, they're not great, but they're stories of Catholicism and going to school at the Pueblo missions. And it's just fun to listen to my mother's jokes and my aunties. All my aunties are passed now, but I spent a lot of time with them, so I got a lot of stories. And one of my favorite stories is how they couldn't go to school without a doily or something on top of their head. It was a Catholic mission school, a Franciscan mission school. And so sometimes they'd be running around looking for a napkin, and they'd put a napkin and pin it with a bobby pin on top of their head and run off to school. So my mother grew up like that, very religious in that sense. And then my father, I don't believe he had religion in an everyday setting like my mother did as a young person. He grew up on a farm, and his family, I don't believe, had a big influence in religious beliefs. Although I know his dad was Baptist, and he was baptized. I just know that because my stepmother asked to baptize him before in his elderly age, like near passing, and he's like, "No, my mom took care of that." So that's the only reason I know that. Other than that, I have no religious like conversation or influence from my grandfather on my father's side. My grandmother, on the other hand, I think she took me to church one time. And I told my dad, Grandma took us to church, and it must have been maybe 7 or 6. And then he made a joke about getting close to older age and having to like, I don't know, I don't remember exactly his words, but start going to church now. So those are the two parents I have. And so I was baptized. I have this beautiful picture of my parents, very hippie. Oh my gosh, they were hippies. And they were holding me, and it was the day I was baptized. And it was the picture with my mom, my dad, and my older brother. Um, so my mother, I don't remember her making me go to church. That's not the relationship we have, not with my parents at all. I think the hippie part of them kind of ruled. The influence I have as a young person is primarily with my maternal grandfather. And that's the man I had said was Catholic, yet he was very active in our Pueblo way of life. So that dual, I was brought up with a very dual understanding of the way I am supposed to pray.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit. Oh, that was very helpful.
Okay.
Very, very helpful. So it sounds like most of the religious influence you felt came from your mom's father.
Yes, it
Okay.
completely.
Completely. So not much from your parents, which you call hippie parents. So their hippiness somehow overshadowed any of their religious lives, from your perspective, at least, and teaching you.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. Although, I do remember I did go to catechism, and at the time I did live with both my parents. So that's one thing, of course, your parents have you do is go to catechism classes, and that was probably every once a week or maybe twice a week, and then you have to go to church every day or every Sunday, and then you make your first communion. And I remember that day very well. It was a really, it's a celebrated time here in the Pueblo when a child makes their first Holy Communion. And it's funny because I don't remember being in the church that much. I don't remember holding the candle like vaguely. I don't remember who I made catechism promotion with, but I remember my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, my dad's mother taking me to buy my outfit, my shoes. And I wanted open toe shoes so badly. And she's like, "No, you can't have open toe shoes. You'll be in church." And I go, "No, I want open toe shoes." And the pictures, I guess I won because I'm in the pictures, I'm wearing open toe sandals.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about your maternal grandfather. Maybe give us some more details about his religious life, and then what he did to teach you. Let's stick with like the elementary school years for right now, when you were young. So first tell us about him, more detail about his religious life, and then what he did with you to teach you.
Okay, well, my experience with my grandfather, his name was Louis Loretto, and he was blind in one eye, and then he developed a cataract in his other eye. He actually, as a young child, was playing and a dynamite blew up in his hand. So he lost some fingers and a thumb, and he lost all his eyesight. And so by the time I think he was 2 or 3 years old, one eye started gaining eyesight again. So he had lost one eye, and then by the time I really got to know him, he had developed a cataract, so he was going blind. And so he was always very accepting of me. He was always happy to see me. For some reason, I felt as though I was his favorite grandchild. I felt as though we had a connection. And so I took it upon myself as a young person, I don't know why, but I would walk him to church. And it's not far. And the church isn't that far away, maybe 3/4 of a mile, maybe half a mile down the road. And so he couldn't see very well. And I would hold his hand and we'd hold hands and go to church. And that was sometimes, most of the time on Sundays. Um, so I always remember that about him. And people always kind of like remember me as that person that was always with my grandfather, walking him to church and or walking him to the plaza when we had dances. For some reason, well, it's just because it's my memories. I'm sure a lot of grandchildren and his children have memories of walking him into the plaza or to the kiva. He was actually a kiva keeper. So the kivas in our tribe are where we not only hold prayers, but we practice dances and we have dances and we have fasting going on. And so, I mean, anybody can read about kivas. So he was actually a kiva keeper. And so I would take him to his specific spot. He would sit and, he'd throw his cornmeal and pray. And, I would wait for him to come out and I'd walk him back home. So these were a lot of our relationship was me walking him to these religious situations, whether it's Pueblo and we're praying, holding cornmeal in our hands and using our breath and our prayers, and then we throw the cornmeal, or it was walking him to church. And those are my earliest memories of my grandfather. Um, Later on, I actually moved back to the Pueblo to help take care of him because he had lost all his eyesight. And this was, I think he was 89 years old when I started taking kind of responsibility of his not complete welfare because I did have help by an auntie of mine. She kind of became a second mother of mine. Her name was Lupe Lucero. And so I wasn't completely responsible for all of his health care, but I kind of was responsible for his happiness. And it was really great because I was able to, I was young. I was in my early 20s, no children, no significant others, or that I cared enough about. And so I would spend time with him. We'd travel. We went to a lot of different churches because these are things that I knew he enjoyed. And because he was completely blind, he explained it to me one time. He's like, I just need to break the monotony. And I was like, it really struck a chord with me. And I felt as though it was my job to do that. I felt like I needed to do that for him. And being an artist, I was very good at explaining things around us. So I would, explain the church. Like we'd walk into a church and I'd be like, oh, there's, 2 rows of pews or there's like, if it was a bigger church, it'd be 3 rows and there's so many pews and what was on the wall. And, I'd walk him through, show him where the holy water is. And we just go to church. So we've been to all the churches together throughout the valley. And then I started taking him to a lot of feast days. And feast days here in the Pueblo are these, I could get, how do I say, I could explain this as a non-Catholic and say this was our compromise to keep our Pueblo traditions, our native traditions. We compromise with the church. So we have our harvest dances on specific saint days, and we tell the church we're celebrating your saint and not our harvest time. But I mean, I could say that, or I could be a very Catholic person and say, with all of my heart and energy, say, we dance and we celebrate for these saint days because, this is what we do. So saint days, our particular saint day here in the Pueblo is San Diego and also Priscilla. So on those days, we have our harvest dances, our corn dances, and that's all very much native. And we have ways of praying that morning. We have ways of giving thanks. And even our attire has the reasons we dance with the attire is for certain prayers for rain and growth in our crops, in our gardens. But we have, oh,
Can I ask a question just so our listeners understand, and so I understand? You have been talking sometimes about two different religions, I think, Catholic, and then
yes,
what you would call your
Pueblo.
indigenous Pueblo
Yes.
belief system. So these dances, these harvest dances, right? You would tell the Catholic Church, I mean, you would tell them that you were there dancing. You're doing something for the saint, for the particular saint, but in reality, you're doing something for your own beliefs. Or help us understand that better. I think I'm a little bit confused about how you were doing this with those two religious cultures.
Well, the way I explained it was, I didn't explain it maybe as clear as I could have. I think over time, okay, so in the beginning, of course, we had to figure out a way to keep our traditions alive in the persecution of Catholic, invasions and priests and conquistadors. I mean, it was a very serious time. Either we choose, to die or we follow the Catholic Church. So these were compromises we took over time in order to keep our traditions alive. And over time, with this belief in Christianity, in Catholicism, I'm still confused on the two, anyways. We have developed this beautiful syncretic culture. We have developed an appreciation and a love to pray both ways. And we don't divide God. We don't divide that. We feel as though God is one and that we pray in our way as a Pueblo person with cornmeal or pollen or just with our breath. We pray to God. We don't divide it from people that pray in the church, that go to the church and have an assistant pray for them. And that assistant would be the priest. So,
But do you do both? I mean,
yeah,
do you do both?
That's what I say. We pray both ways. So
you do
many
go into the church and pray as a Catholic, but you also do these other things. And to you, they're
one.
not, they're one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've developed some gorgeous dancing, like I don't know if you're familiar with the Matachina, the Spanish Matachina dance, and it's a very Catholic dance, and we've incorporated a lot of our customs with it, and it's just become such a beautiful situation. The way we dress, we have compromised some things, over time that's developed into a beautiful culture of its own by combining both beliefs and making them one.
So you said you took your grandfather to many churches in the valley. Are these different Christian denominations, or are they all Catholic churches that you?
He would never go to another church at that.
All Catholic is where, okay.
Yeah, so he was really influential to me. Like I know like the mysteries, the rosary, towards when he was older and I had moved back with him, he would have us sit down and we'd do the rosary. I have a cousin named Leatrice, and we shared a lot of this time together with him. and he would have us sit and do the rosary. And it's kind of curious to me when I think about it, like, wow, I had this huge life, and then I was so interested in this grandfather of mine that I just kind of stopped everything on the outside of the Pueblo, and I just came home to be with him. And so he had a lot of opinions about Catholicism, and he had a lot of opinions about Pueblo religion. And it was just wonderful to have his words in me and his acceptance for me, because I'm not the thing about being in this community. A lot of people are all Pueblo. I'm not only Pueblo, but I'm Anishinaabe. My father's from a different place. And so a lot of
Okay.
times that always has a dual, it's an effect. I don't even know how to say this. But anyways, it's complicated when your parents are from different places. But he was
Okay.
very accepting, and we had a great relationship in that I felt as though he was always teaching me.
That's very moving. That the story you just shared about you and your grandfather and all that he did with you, um, and you did with him. So would your grandfather, so is everybody generally part of this syncretic religion, like, or are there some that are just Catholic and some that are just, you know, doing I don't know what to call it, but embracing the indigenous religious beliefs? Or
That's
what is it like?
exactly how you say it. That's a
Okay,
perfect way to say it. Of course, of
okay,
course, we're people, and we're,
right,
4,500 people in my particular village. So of course we have some hardcore Catholics that don't, or Presbyterian,
yeah,
or born again Baptists. There's a lot of different denominations here now. Of course, we're in the United States. Um, and some of those denominations renounce Pueblo activity
I
altogether.
see.
They do
Okay,
not, it's a heathen act,
understood. Okay,
they
okay.
can't, yeah.
But your heritage. So what would you call yourself if someone came up to you and asked you, Kathleen, what is your religion? What would you tell
I, s-
them?
I say Catholic.
You say Catholic. Okay.
It's easy. It's so
Okay.
easy to just say Catholic, because I
Yep.
mean, it's complicated. And then you get questions, you get too much questions. And
Sure.
we're not a people that like to share too much. I mean, you can tell even by this particular interview, I'm not sharing excessive religious information. We're
Nope.
very
Right.
private people, and we're not accustomed to recruiting.
So
If
you
nothing
don't.
else, we're like, stay away.
I see. So there's really no. So I really appreciate you submitting yourself to this interview, because I know when we talked originally on the National Mall, you said as much that we don't talk and share a lot about this. So I really appreciate you doing this, because I think it's very, very helpful for us to understand, because of the complicated nature of the relationship between European colonizers and the people who are already here. Um, could you share some more about the dancing and the praying with cornmeal or pollen? That sounded very interesting. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit more about that?
Okay, so the reason we pray with cornmeal and pollen is because we care a great deal about our communities and our way of life. And our way of life encompasses growing our cornfields and our gardens. And a lot of what we do, we we're always talking about growing. We're always appreciating what we've been given, like the corn grows up. We're always appreciative of that. We're always appreciative of the sun. We're always appreciative of the rain. So we're very
Okay.
earth-based
Sure. Yep.
people.
Yep.
So the corn pollen and the cornmeal are those appreciations.
Okay. That makes sense. When you were in your younger years, say up to like age 11 or 12, what was your religious life like at your home?
Non-existent.
Okay, non-existent, but you had your grandfather, your maternal grandfather, who would do things.
11 and 12, I was living in the city with my mother. I was in between. My mother and father had already been divorced by now. And so I was in between Durango, Colorado, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my parents were very busy. They were young parents trying to go to college. My dad's trying to get a law degree. It was like religion's on the back burner when you're trying to, figure out school and figure out how to feed these crazy kids. And
Right.
and being home wasn't an option. The reservation's a little ways out of the way. There's no college right here. You have to leave for college. So that in that time frame, it was non-existent. The only time I've had an active religion, an active religious experiences is when I've been on this reservation, on this
Okay.
Pueblo, in this Pueblo.
And you said at the beginning that you remember you were taken to church for baptism. I mean, there was something that happened, right? That you were talking about, your picture of you with your shoes, your open-toed shoes. What
Oh,
was
that
that
was
again?
First Holy Communion.
First
First
Holy
Holy,
Communion. And
I
how
lived
old were
here
you?
then. Yeah,
Okay,
I think First Holy Communion is like second or third grade, something like that.
okay. So so
We lived here then.
when you were really young, you weren't there. You were in different cities while your
No,
parents
I
were.
was I was here during catechism, and my First Holy Communion was here in the Pueblo.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So the moving around didn't start until maybe 8, 7, 6,
Okay. Got it.
yeah, because the divorce and the different,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that kind
But
of
so
stuff.
early on, there was a religious life in your
Very
house.
much. That's when I walked. Well, that's when I walked my grandfather to church. I honestly don't ever remember being in church with my parents.
Okay. Okay.
I don't have that memory of my parents. Maybe, yeah, maybe probably my mom at some point.
But
Uh,
you did have First Holy Communion when you were in second or third
yes,
grade. You do remember that.
yes, completely. And
Okay.
I was baptized. I have imagery of my parents, me and my parents during my baptism and my godparents. I have pictures of my godparents.
And how
And it's
old were
kind of
you
neat. I'm brand new. We take the
as a
babies.
baby? Okay. I
Yeah,
didn't know if that was still the case uh,
yeah, we take
with
them
the
brand new.
syncretic. Okay. So that was when you were a baby.
And
Okay.
it's really beautiful because we do combine Pueblo culture and tradition with the baptism as well, because the day that a child is baptized, we give them their native name with a corn. We give them their name with breath and a corn cob, like a corn. So I mean,
Wow.
and we pray. We have men pray for us in our language, and it's beautiful. It's very different than Catholicism, but it's also beautiful, and it's all together.
Right. And you would call that Catholicism for you. It includes both, right?
Um, no, there is a divide. Although we do things the same day, we honor things almost in the same
Mhm.
way, but it is very different because Catholicism won't ever embrace, like, I don't think they would embrace cornmeal and corn pollen.
Right. But for you, it's one. But institutionally, it's different.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. And is okay, so why don't you tell us now you moved into your teenage years, let's say, um, what is your religious life like?
I think it tended to lean towards indigenous events because as I got into my teens, I was able to drive. I drove very young, and I would come home. My parents would live here and there, and I would always drive home and I would take part in the corn dances. And that was something I loved to do. And I would take my grandpa to the kiva again. And I just felt as though it was my responsibility. I'd take him to the kiva. We'd practice for the 4 days, and then we'd have the event on San Diego Feast or Persingula Feast Day. And so I didn't necessarily go to church, but I came home to participate in the cultural, the very Pueblo acts. And so I don't remember going to church too much then, but when I turned 24, I don't know why, I felt like I wanted to go to church. And so I started to. I not only took my grandfather again, because I had moved home by then.
Right.
So
Right.
I was taking him often to church, and he liked to go at like 6 in the morning. He liked to, like, oh my God, I was half asleep. And then I lived in this area where one of my cousins lived near me. It wasn't in the Pueblo, it was just off the Pueblo. And her kids were studying catechism, and they were required to go to church every week, like, catechism students do. So I was like, well, I'll take them, I'll go to church, So I don't know why I went to church quite a bit from 24 until maybe 28, maybe 28. And after that, I had met my husband, wasn't my husband at the time, but I do remember, you know, I do remember meeting the priest, when you're thinking of getting married and you're like, oh gosh, we got to do all this. And, I wasn't confirmed because I wasn't brought up extremely religious from my parents. So it wasn't a thing, to get confirmed. And so we went to talk to the priest because my husband and I wanted to get married. And so we sit down, and the priest already knew me because I had been to church for the last 4 years, So, and I was with my grandpa all the time, going to church, like way too much for for me anyway. I felt that. Anyways, he had asked me this question, and the question was, what is your religious practice like? What is your religious practice? What do you do? And I go, I'm, it's in waves. It comes in waves. Because like I could feel myself like thinking back, like, wait, I go to church right now, but a while back I didn't go to church. And then I remember going to church a lot with my grandfather younger. So I felt like my Catholic religious experience came in waves. Like, when I could, maybe when I felt it was helpful, maybe when I felt appreciative for things. I was in a space when I was about 25, where I felt very thankful for where I was and my life, and I felt like praying was a big part of it. Or I still do, of course. Um, Praying sometimes is such a big part of how well you're doing in life, in my opinion. And it's just in my experience, sometimes the more I pray, the better things get, or the better your clarity of the world is. And for me, it doesn't matter how I pray, whether I pray in the Catholic Church or if I wake up in the morning and I pray outside with cornmeal. As long as I'm praying, as long as I'm acknowledging everything around me and giving thanks for everything I have, it's enough for me.
Beautiful. And you told that to the priest. That's how you explained your religious life.
No, I didn't explain it in depth. I just told him it comes in waves.
Right.
but that was me explaining me now in
Right, right,
myself.
right. So for the priest, did they know of, like, did they know that you were also involved in the indigenous belief systems and rituals, and or do you try to hide that from them? Or because for you it's one, but for others it's not, and for others it might be problematic, perhaps, I don't know. How did the priest, or how did the priest then, did you tell him, or did he
Well,
know?
the mission is here.
Okay.
It's a Franciscan mission. So they know what's going on in the community all the time. They're
Okay.
not invited to the majority of our events and the majority of
Okay.
our customs. They're not invited.
Okay.
Um, we I don't know how to I mean, I guess how I explained the syncretic culture is good enough, but um I do understand that there are people that don't embrace Catholicism, and I'm probably one of them that aren't completely in it,
Okay.
especially since my grandfather's been gone. You know, he was my grounding to the Catholic Church. He was the person saying, well, I know it's a little nutty, but let's just go, you know, and that's to me all religion, all everything is just like, let's just do this and see how this helps us as a person. You know, I kind of
Right.
feel that approach to it. Um, since since I've gotten married, I haven't been very active in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
I baptized my first baby because it was kind of this motion of Catholicism. You get married. I had a baby, I baptized him, and then I baptized my second child. And then I really fell off. I mean, this was like, I don't know, I didn't see where the Catholic Church at that time was benefiting my life. I just felt very much at peace being just native, just being home. And I didn't baptize my third child, not in protest, but like I said, I think my life is kind of in waves. And in the wave of my youngest child being an infant, I just wasn't participating in Catholicism. And
Okay.
and it is a participation. You know, all religion
Sure.
is. If you don't participate, you're just not in it, you
Right.
know? And it's so wild to me. Just recently, my husband and I were asked to witness a wedding, and it's an honor. It's an over-the-top honor. It's exciting, and uh I'm not even sure how to explain the feelings I have because I never thought we would do this. But now I had better get back to church.
Oh, right.
No, I'm just not real happy with the priest right now. He's very political and I just don't appreciate it. I don't know. But
But
I have to, you know, I have to start going to church and we'll be getting married in the church. Um,
you'll be witnessing a marriage in the church,
the way we do things is
because
we combine native custom with the Catholic protocols. So there's two protocols, and so when we become witness to a wedding, we're not just witnessing a wedding and signing a paper. We are becoming their parents, and this is a native way of how we get married here.
okay,
So
let me ask that, just to make sure I understand and our listeners understand. You've been asked to witness a wedding, right? And is that someone who's getting married in the Catholic Church, or somebody? Okay, so, but when you
yeah.
say you combine things, you don't combine things in the Catholic Church, do you? It's
Well,
separate.
I guess I'd have to say we do because we are all in there. So what we do as a traditional Hamas wedding is when they ask us to witness, we're not just witnessing the wedding, we're becoming their parents.
Okay.
And so we are getting married with them. So my husband
Okay.
and I are
I
kind of
see.
remarrying ourselves. Me
Okay.
and my husband are getting remarried as they get married. So we're becoming a family. And they have a couple children that are now our will be our grandchildren. And they will be our children where they will be able to come to us for advice. We help them in other cultural events because we have a lot of cultural events here, a lot of things going on, and we live in a the native part of us, the indigenous part of us, we live in reciprocity. So we're always helping the next family. We're always helping the next person. And when it's our turn to be helped, they will help us. So that's the community
Okay.
we live in. And so when we become their parents, now we'll be helping them in whatever ventures they have as Native people.
Okay. But I'm still confused here. They're getting married in the Catholic Church?
Mhm.
But then there's other things surrounding that marriage that are indigenous
Yes,
religious rituals. But
yes.
they will get married in the Catholic Church like anybody else would get married in the Catholic Church, I suppose. Is that
Yeah, we get, regular marriage, walk down the aisle,
in the
exchange
Catholic Church?
in the
Okay.
Catholic church with the priest.
With the
Yeah.
priest. But then there's other things associated outside the Catholic Church from
Yes.
okay. Now you said something interesting. You said, with your third child, from that point, you sort of weren't participating in Catholic religious life, but were you participating in your your indigenous religious life still?
Yes. I believe that's just a constant.
That
That's the
a
constant.
constant.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
And that's the
Catholicism,
kiva,
yeah.
that's going to the kiva,
That's
dancing, praying.
dancing, praying on a daily basis.
Okay.
That's but it's very convenient as well because you're wherever you are. You pray in the morning. You just
Right.
you wherever you are, you hold you hold appreciation for your surroundings. You give thanks. You acknowledge wherever you are. You don't have to, get dressed up and
Right.
go to a
Okay.
church.
So, um, maybe here at the end, can you explain to us, like, if someone were to ask you right now, what are you religiously? You would say Catholic. You said that before. Um, can you share with us what that means on a daily and a weekly basis? What does your religious life look like on in a given week?
I think it's primarily the indigenous way of praying with corn. That's something that happens on a daily basis. Primarily when the sun's coming up, but I don't wake up that early, so I just go outside whenever I wake up.
Fair
Um,
enough.
and the majority of it is giving thanks. My prayer, it's majority of it's giving thanks and acknowledging my family and the people around me and praying for strength. That encompasses my daily prayer.
Okay. So daily prayer is the primary uh, ritual or
Right now.
right
But
now.
now I have to start going to church
Right, right. Exactly.
because the priest won't let us um, witness this wedding if we're not going to church as well.
Okay, right. Now,
So who knows, that might start my wave again. Maybe I'll
right.
just enjoy it again and love the priest sermons and the just everything about it and start going again for a while. I don't know. We'll see.
And let me ask you a pretty deep religious question because it defines the Catholic Church or any Christian denomination. That there is this person of Jesus Christ, right? This is the central figure in that religion. Um, how do you view him how do you view him in the syncretic religion of yours? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I think acknowledgement is probably my way of doing this. I don't have this view of giving myself. I think that's what I see a lot of um, religious communities doing, giving themselves to Jesus.
I
And
see. Okay.
I don't have that active, um, I guess, I don't even know how to call it. It's an active action, maybe, or
Right. Right.
but we acknowledge definitely, and we respect, we do. Um, and we do believe, we do. We have these events where we just celebrate Jesus. We have,
On the
we,
indigenous religious side.
yes, both. We actually, for the 12 days of Christmas, for his birth, we take the sculpture, what's it called, the Santo out of the church, and we take this Santo to a house in the Pueblo. One of the families will ask for the baby Jesus, and we celebrate baby Jesus for the entire 12 days. And we have dancing and we have food and we all dress in our native attire, and we invite anybody and everybody to come celebrate with us because of the baby Jesus's coming into the world. So, I mean, for me, I'm not a scholar in religion. I'm not the most knowledgeable in religion. I feel as though I lightly navigate Catholicism.
Well said. Okay, that makes sense. Is there any friction where you live between, let's say, Catholicism, because that's where you find yourself, and the native religious belief systems and organizations?
Oh, completely. I mean, if you want to, get historical and the persecution that our
Yes,
people,
historical, yes, but like right now,
yeah, because
it,
if you acknowledge it, if you understand it, and if you get into it, you get angry. You get angry at the powers that were and that may still be. And how do you cope with that? Especially a young person dealing with like the new news of what your people went through. For that person, it would be new. You know what I mean? So
sure,
everything, and we can't describe person. I mean, everybody's different. Every household is
sure,
different.
yep.
I must say the Catholic Church isn't completely strong right now. We don't have a huge attendance, opposed to our tribal dances where everybody goes. Well, almost everybody, but Catholicism is sometimes hard to bring yourself to participate.
And that's fascinating that you still, though, call yourself Catholic. With all that, it's just, it just sort of is. You have your grandfather
Yes.
who sort of rooted you to
I
that
Yeah, I think so. And then I'm baptized
when you're
Catholic.
baptized.
Yeah, I don't, like I say, I'm I very lightly,
Right.
but I am Catholic. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what's
Yeah.
on the paper. I have the baptism certificate. I have the what's it, the First Holy Communion certificate. And I
Right.
have marriage.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
have
Yep.
two children that are baptized. So I mean, I can't say I'm not Catholic. I've
Right.
done the paperwork.
Right. Right. Okay. Last question here for real. Tell us the most important, if they have them, if you have them, tenets of your indigenous religious belief system.
Wait, the most important what?
Tenets, like believe, like what do you believe? Like if you ask a religious person, you say, "Hey, what do you believe?" They'll list you off, top five. Here's what we
Right.
believe. You know, uh,
Okay.
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. The Bible is the Word
Right.
of God. Things like that. What if someone were to ask you in an elevator, what do you all believe And let's leave out
I
Catholicism.
believe, because I
What do you,
can't speak for everybody. This is
understood. Understood. Let's leave out Catholicism because most of our listeners understand Catholicism, but your indigenous belief system, what are its beliefs,
core. Yeah.
core beliefs?
I guess I have to revert to believing in our ancestors. I feel as though I have ancestral beliefs. I always talk to ancestors. I feel as though that's what holds me up. And I guess you can equivalent to the angels, like now they're an angel, that's what I feel keeps me grounded when I think of my grandmother and her poise and her beautiful way of navigating the world. I feel as though she's given that to me and she holds that up in me today. When I think of my grandfather and his teachings of not only how to navigate this world I live in now and in this Pueblo, he's with me and he's helping me. I think at my core, I know my ancestors are helping me through this world.
Okay. Well said. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Would we call it something, that belief system? Like we know it's
I
called
have an
Catholicism,
ancestral, yeah, it's ancestral beliefs. I
ancestral
think I'm
beliefs.
best, yeah, I feel as though I'm based in that.
Yeah.
It's almost, a lot of it falls into Catholicism too. I mean, we still have the Saint Day. I mean, what's it called? All Souls Day, where we really not only remember, but we actively think of them, engage with them, cook for them. We know, you know what I mean? We do
Yeah.
these things, and
Right.
I don't know if I actually don't know if it's Catholicism. I don't
Uh,
even.
well,
Anyway,
yeah,
but it's ancestral. I have an ancestral
ancestral.
belief. Yeah.
Okay. Because and that's important for our listeners and me to understand that the way we talk about religions in is a little bit different than the way Native peoples do. They don't, you talk about ancestral religion, where most people are used to calling it Methodist, or they're Jewish, or they're Catholic. But here, you have a different way of talking about it, and even not labeling it. You say it's ancestral. This is my ancestral religion, which is fascinating, I think. So, did I get that right? Yeah,
Sure. I'm
sure.
not, like I said, I
No, understand. And you've
yeah,
made the point that there's so many different belief systems in Native
right,
American cultures, right? You're just one
right.
person talking about your experience. So we
So
understand that. Thank you.
I'm gonna look forward to more, because it's so different here in the Pueblo. We were dominated by Catholicism in, say, I'm not sure, the Woodlands area. I think it was Baptist, and like the
Right.
Mississippi Choctaw, that's going to be, I don't know, it's just regional, of course, and whatever
Absolutely.
church landed there, that's going to be the influence of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. We have been talking with Kathleen Wall of Jemez, Pueblo, New Mexico. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for giving us your time and sharing how religion has shaped and influenced you over the years and your life. It has been very, very wonderful for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
The podcast series Religion in the American Experience is a project of the National Museum of American Religion. Episodes will be released monthly on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.